She didn't walk in with fire, but she walked out and left ashes. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett wasn't on a mission that day. No headlines, no cameras, just a quiet drive through Texas, a missed turn, and hunger. Then came the diner, the flags, the faces that froze. No one yelled, no one cursed, but the message rang loud. You're not welcome here. And when she was told gently, coldly, firmly to leave, she did something no one expected. She looked the woman in the eye and said, "You have a good day," then turned and walked into the heat. But that moment, that 1 second of dignity, when she could have chosen rage, it echoed louder than any speech on Capitol Hill. What happened next? Inside that diner, across that town, and in one young woman's heart was a quiet revolution no one saw coming. Stay with us, because this isn't just another story. It's the lesson our ancestors whispered through clenched teeth. Subscribe and stay, because silence no longer protects us. 3 hours into a stretch of sunburnt road, Jasmine Crockett needed only 2 things: water and something warm in her stomach. The plan had been simple: a quiet stop before a community roundtable just outside Abilene. No reporters, no speeches, just listening, just showing up the way she always did between courtrooms and Congress, where the real work often happens off camera. But somewhere along Route 83, the GPS cut out. No signal, no shortcut, just miles of brown grass, leaning fence posts, and a rising Texas heat that seemed to seep into your bones. By the time they realized they'd missed their exit, the hunger had turned into fatigue. Jasmine rubbed her temples and said with a soft smile, "Let's stop somewhere. Doesn't matter where." Devon, her Adeline, sharp, dressed in black, like always, nodded and took the next turn. They found themselves pulling into a diner that looked like it had been carved from 1962 and left untouched. Stevie Ray's Smokehouse. The sign hung crooked on rusted chains. Below it, in chipped red paint, family, faith, freedom. An American flag mural bled across the side of the building, oversized and sun-faded. The parking lot was full boots and pickups, hats and sunglasses. 2 older white men sat outside, sipping coffee from styrofoam cups, their glances following Jasmine as she stepped out of the car. She wasn't dressed like someone from around there. A navy pantsuit, creased but clean, low heels that had traveled too far. A necklace small enough to miss, but meaningful if you caught it. Initials of her mother etched in gold. She looked poised, but tired. Not tired like I need a nap. Tired like I've been holding 2 worlds together all day and still managed to show up. Inside, the air was thick with ribs and coffee. Fox News flickered on one screen. High school football replays on another. A wall displayed military patches. Another framed photos of Trump, cowboy hats, camo jackets, and silence, the kind that doesn't announce itself, but arrives anyway. As Jasmine and Devon entered, every eye turned, not in a welcome, not in awe, in calculation. Behind the counter, a woman in her 50s, dish towel in hand, tight mouth, unreadable stare-locked eyes with Jasmine. She didn't flinch, didn't smile. Jasmine stepped forward, voice gentle. "Hi there, table for 2. The woman didn't move, didn't blink. From the bar, a man with a red neck and a bald head chuckled under his breath. "I think y'all might be better off somewhere else." Devon shifted. Jasmine didn't. "We're just looking for something quick," he said. "Won't be long." The woman spoke, not loud, but sharp. "We're a private business. We reserve the right to refuse service." It was legalese. Rehearsed. Cold. Jasmine stood very still. She didn't ask why. She didn't raise her voice. She scanned the room. Some eyes looked away. Others stayed hard, unflinching. A boy in camo froze mid-bite. His chicken tender hovered halfway to his mouth. Jasmine looked back to the woman. "Okay," she said, softly. "Thanks anyway." She turned, then she saw the sign by the door, laminated, bold letters. "We support law enforcement. The Second Amendment. Free speech. No masks. No excuses." She paused, not to fight, not to plead, just long enough to read it, to let the words land. She opened the door. No one moved. No one spoke. Before stepping out, she turned back, not to the room, to the woman. "You have a good day." No sarcasm, no snarl, just dignity. The door closed, but something stayed. In the far booth, a waitress, no older than 20, had stood up, her hand on the edge of the table, her eyes wide. She had seen it, all of it. The calm, the strength, the grace, and somewhere deep in that room of flags, brisket and fear. Something small, but seismic had begun to shift. Heather Briggs hadn't meant to stand up. Her feet just moved. 1 second. She was wiping down the last booth, listening to the usual chatter politics, weather, fuel prices, and the next, she was frozen. She'd never seen someone like Jasmine Crockett up close before. Sure, she'd seen headlines, heard names. That firecracker from Congress, the black lady who don't back down. But this wasn't fire. This was something quieter, stronger. Heather had watched the whole thing from the pause at the door, to the way Jasmine had smiled when she didn't have to the way her thank you had landed like a sermon wrapped in satin. She didn't say a word, but she said everything. Heather sat down after the door closed, but her chest wouldn't stop tightening. She looked at Lorraine, who'd already gone back to wiping the counter like nothing had happened, and felt something pinch in her stomach. The kind of shame that doesn't scream, the kind that lingers. That night, after the last plate had been scrubbed and the lights dimmed, Heather opened her phone and typed in the name, Jasmine Crockett. Up came the headlines. Congresswoman, civil rights attorney, Texas-born. A clip from a House hearing, Jasmine holding her ground, dissecting a lie with surgical calm. Another from a rally. If they don't hear us in silence, they'll hear us in votes. But the woman in the diner hadn't been that speaker. She hadn't brought sound. She brought weight. Heather scrolled, rewatched, read. Something stirred. She didn't know what to call it, just that it felt like a knot loosening and tying again in a different place. She opened her notes app. No plan, no audience, just a need to get it out. Today, I watched the woman get turned away. Not because she was rude, not because she caused a scene, because of who she was, and who this town decided she wasn't. But she didn't argue. She didn't shout. She left with grace. And it made me wonder, how many people have we turned away? And how many truths have we missed? Because we couldn't see past our own fear. She saved it. Not a post. Not yet. Just truth. The next morning, she shared it on a blog she barely used, a quiet corner of the internet, where she wrote about night shifts, school deadlines, and the strange in-between of being young in a town that felt like it had already made up its mind. By lunchtime, it had 3 shares, then 10, then 50. No name, no location, just the story. But somehow, everyone knew. And then the photo dropped. Someone had snapped it. Jasmine's back as she walked to her car, the diner behind her. In the corner of the frame, Heather could be seen through the window standing, unsure, but watching. The caption was simple. Sometimes, grace is the loudest thing in the room. It spread like a whisper with wings. At first, Heather panicked. Was this too much? Would she lose her job? But then, something stranger happened. Customers, The same ones who always nodded but never spoke started leaving notes on napkins. "We saw it too. You did the right thing." A local teacher came in and said, "I shared your post with my class. Conservative, practical, quiet." Sent her a message. "Proud of you. Just be careful." Heather reread the note. Be careful. Careful of what? Truth. Jasmine hadn't done anything loud. She didn't demand a seat. She didn't shout injustice. She didn't need to. She'd stood, taken the weight, and walked away without leaving a single crack. But somehow, the whole building had shifted. Heather couldn't explain it. But she knew one thing. Something in her had changed. And once it changed, it wouldn't go back. You wouldn't have found it on CNN. It didn't hit the New York Times. But something had shifted, not just in Ballinger, not just in Texas, across the quiet corners of the United States. It began as a blog post, a waitress, a nameless account of quiet grace, and an uglier truth. No names, no callouts, just what happened. But the internet has a way of finding what matters. Someone shared it to a Facebook group for nurses. Someone else reposted it on a Reddit thread titled "Everyday Resistance." By morning, it was being quoted on Twitter threads by people who had never set foot in Texas but understood the silence of being unwelcome. The story didn't shout. It whispered. And still, people leaned in. At Capitol Hill, Jasmine Crockett sat in her office with a stack of committee notes in front of her. Her aide Devin scrolled his phone, paused, and said, "Congresswoman Jasmine, latest news not what you expect today." He turned the screen toward her. It was a photo, a man named Gideon Pratt, rancher, hardliner, known for his God, guns and grit. Motto, sitting at that same diner counter, same seat, same posture, same silence. He'd asked for whatever that lady wanted that day, and he paid double. Jasmine stared at the image. No press release, no speeches, just a man sitting where she stood, an apology, not in words, but in posture. And that photo, it traveled, shared in group chats by Black grandmothers in Baltimore, posted by high school students in Detroit with captions like, "Real recognize real," reposted by civil rights groups, historians, even a retired congressman who simply wrote, "We fought for the right to be seated. This is why we still fight." In church basements, elderly Black men leaned over printouts of the photo, shaking their heads. "Look at that," one said. Didn't raise her voice, and still made the room listen. In barbershops across Atlanta and Jackson, the talk wasn't just about sports that weekend. It was about dignity, about how a Black woman stood firm in a town that wasn't ready and didn't flinch, about how, somehow, United States Congress, latest news, wasn't a scandal, but a moment of character. Jasmine hadn't planned on staying in the story. She thought she'd left that diner behind. But then she received the email, a few sentences, from Heather. "You probably didn't mean to stop in, but I saw what happened, and it changed something in me." Jasmine read it in silence. This wasn't policy. This wasn't legislation. This was why she ran, not just to pass bills, but to remind people what leadership looks like in small, unseen moments. She replied with a call. No cameras, no handlers, just a woman who knew what it meant to be judged before she spoke. They talked about life, about nursing school, about fear, about hope. "You were the only one who saw me as more than a headline," Jasmine said. Heather's voice cracked. "I think you're the one who taught me what courage actually looks like." And while no headline covered it, something deeper was happening. The shift wasn't loud. It was steady. At the diner, Lorraine never apologized. But she also never said we reserve the right again. More Black travelers started showing up. Some didn't stay. Some sat, ordered, and ate in silence, their presence louder than any protest. Flags still waved on the wall. But the room had changed. In cities across America, black elders spoke of Jasmine's quiet stand, the way they spoke of sit-ins and silent marches. It wasn't the same, but it echoed. One act, one moment, one refusal to be shamed, and in a world still trying to decide what strength looks like, a tired black woman, hungry, unshaken, had reminded everyone, sometimes grace makes the biggest noise of all. They say history is written by the loud, but this was written in whispers, not on courtroom steps, not in campaign speeches, but in the silence of a roadside diner and the hush that followed. 2 months after that day, Heather Briggs no longer worked evenings. She'd enrolled full-time at her local community college, nursing. Her blog, once filled with daily shifts and tired complaints, became something else entirely. She started writing about dignity, about what it means to speak when your voice shakes, about the weight of watching injustice and deciding not to blink. And people listened, not thousands, not millions, but the ones who mattered, the ones who'd stood in rooms like that, the ones who'd been stared down, the ones who'd had to smile while their stomachs twisted. Jasmine Crockett didn't post about the incident. No press release, no headline. But those who knew her, they knew, they saw it in how she carried herself in the House of Representatives, quieter sometimes, but heavier, sharper. Someone whispered. She brought Heather's email into a closed-door strategy meeting and read it aloud. Just 7 words. She didn't try to punish us. It wasn't strategy. It was scripture. Across the country, older black Americans sat forward in their chairs. Not because it was new, but because it was familiar. How many times had they been turned away, told not today, looked in the face of hate, and walked out with dignity intact? How many times had they swallowed rage to protect a dream? Jasmine wasn't the first. She was their echo. And now, younger generations were listening. In schools, teachers used the story not to shame, but to show, what does real leadership look like? They asked, and students answered, composure, grace, courage that doesn't need volume. At Stevie Ray's, the shifts continued. Lorraine still worked the counter, still wiped it down every night, but no one ever heard her say, we reserve the right. Again, the mural outside faded a little more with each passing season, but inside, something had brightened. More faces, more colors, more silence broken by kindness. And Heather, she kept going. She graduated, became a registered nurse, moved 3 counties over, but every so often, someone would recognize her. Weren't you the girl from that story? And she'd smile. I was just the girl who watched. But she wasn't. She was the one who spoke when silence was easier. The one who chose not to pretend it was just business. The one who turned witnessing into action. Her blog post, long since archived, now hangs framed in a community center near Dallas. No plaque, just words. Character is contagious. And the way we treat each other when no one's watching matters the most. And somewhere in Washington, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett still carries that story in her coat pocket, not literally, but in her steps. You see it in how she holds the line during hearings, in how she speaks low, firm, unflinching, in how she chooses dignity even when fire is easier. That day, she didn't raise a fist, but she raised the bar for what it means to walk through America as a black woman, for what it means to be told no and respond with grace, for what it means to be powerful and kind. So let this be the memory we pass down, not of the woman denied a seat, but of the woman who didn't need one to be seen, because dignity isn't something they can hand us. It's what we carry, always have, and if you feel that weight in your chest right now, then pass it on. Speak black truth. If this story moves something in your chest, don't scroll past. Like, share, stand, subscribe. Because they silenced our voices long enough, let's raise them louder than ever. Thank you for being here. We'll see you in the next story, the kind they still don't want you to hear. Congresswoman Jasmine. Latest news is not just in policy, it's in presence. United States Congress. Latest news should start here with the quiet revolutions that never made the 6 o'clock news. She didn't come to make a point, she came for a sandwich. But in that quiet moment, with eyes watching, judgment thick in the air, and a door gently closing behind her, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett made history without saying a word. She stood in the space where many of our mothers stood, denied not by violence, but by silence, turned away with politeness that cut just as deep as any slur. And instead of shouting, instead of feeding the hate with more fire, she offered grace, a thank you that echoed louder than any protest, and that changed everything. It didn't need to go viral. It didn't need hashtags or trending topics, because the most powerful movements in Black America didn't start online. They started at lunch counters, on front porches, in church basements. They started with one person deciding enough. Heather Briggs didn't plan to be brave. She didn't storm out with a fist in the air. She whispered, truth in a room built to shut it out. And then came Gideon, and Kenny, and a dozen others who saw something they couldn't unsee, a Black woman standing tall, a community forced to look in the mirror, a ripple that moved without permission, across counties, across screens, across hearts. This wasn't about one diner. It wasn't even about Jasmine. It was about who we choose to be when no one's watching. It was about the power of posture, the strength in restraint, the fire inside quiet resistance. At a time when the United States Congress' latest news is often scandal or division, this story reminded us of something deeper. That change doesn't always start with policy. Sometimes it starts with presence. Jasmine Crockett. She showed us what leadership looks like, not just in hearings or headlines, but in that small Texas diner where she chose character over confrontation. She reminded us that Black dignity is not up for debate, that respect isn't something we wait for, it's something we carry. And as for Heather, her story lives on not in a viral clip, but in every young Black girl who learns that power can be quiet, that courage doesn't always come with applause. Let this be the lesson. Sometimes the most radical act is to walk away with grace, not because we're afraid, but because we've already survived worse, because we know who we are. So if this story moved something inside you, if it reminded you of your grandmother's silence, your uncle's quiet strength, or the dignity you've had to hold on to all your life, don't let it stop here. Say it with us. Speak Black truth. Justice rising. We rise still. Congress can hear US. It's time for justice. And if no one ever tells this story again, you'll still know it mattered. Because it mattered to Heather. It mattered to Jasmine. And it matters to all of us who know that strength isn't always loud. If this story moves something in your chest, don't scroll past. Like, share, stand, subscribe. Because they silenced our voices long enough. Let's raise them louder than ever. Thank you for being here. We'll see you in the next story, the kind they still don't want you to hear.